From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's show, I have Andrew Seidman with me, and we're going to talk all about marketing automation. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing concierge that helps you put all your marketing pieces together. We are your marketing experts. We are also your WordPress security experts and know how to lock down a website and protect yourself from bad actors. So contact us at Stunning Digital Marketing today. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I'm here with my guest, Mr. Andrew Seidman. Hey Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Rob?
Not bad for a Monday at the time of this record. There's lots going on in the world. I don't even want to get into politics. It's just the way the world is, right?
It is, no doubt.
No doubt. So today I thought we thought we'd talk about marketing automation. So I gotta ask you, as a marketer, how did you get into that specific niche?
For me personally, I actually started in just like regular operations. So, and I'm, one of the co-founders at Digital Reach. And so we were bootstrapped and I was just like doing whatever the company had asked me to do. And so that started off with things like, payroll and invoicing and that kind of stuff. But then pretty quickly, and this is, 13 years ago, started becoming questions like, hey, we'd like to be able to report on this thing. Like we're running ads for our clients. We started off doing Google search ads as our kind of our core business. And so people would say, hey, we want to actually report on how the leads are doing, something simple like that.
Yeah.
And so that would then lead me into this kind of like one step in front of the other. Well, how do we track the leads? Like where does the data go when a lead fills out a form on the site? And then it's, okay, it's in this program. Like I think we started working with Marketo quite early. And it's like, okay, well, it's going into Marketo. And then, okay, well, if it's in Marketo, how do we actually think about like reporting on it? Which then, now we're talking about using the data in the system to run a report, but then you run into all of these problems of like, oh, well, what's the date parameter that we want to use? And like, why don't these numbers line up properly? And so I think it was a really kind of natural and organic development that started off with a pretty simple question about reporting and ended up in a very detailed like data philosophy, data architecture, like how should information move throughout a system, and ultimately in service of making good decisions. So that's I would say that's like the abridged version of how I ended up in marketing automation myself. And for our business, same idea. Like people would ask, they would ask us these questions about reporting or how to improve their systems. And those, went from can I get some advice to can I get some help to can I do a full engagement? And as those engagements started happening, we started hiring people, and that's kind of how we built the RevOps and marketing automation component of our business.
Yeah, that's interesting. Two things I really like there. One, you said you started off doing a multitude of things in ops, and I think that's really important. I think where a lot of marketers don't get it is they have a marketing background, but they don't have the business background to go with it. And I think that's really important. So much so that I kind of was thinking back to a college course I took in the 80s. My original training, I don't know if I've ever told you, is I was a PA, programmer analyst.
I
But
didn't know
the college I went to, I used to program old COBOL systems. There's a language, an old one. And the college I went to insisted that in the first semester, every business student took a common business course that included accounting, marketing, and ops and production ops courses. And everybody said, why? And, at the time it didn't make sense, but it was the same reason. It was to give you a well-rounded background so you can make the right decision. And I think that's probably served you really well than not.
Yeah, I mean, we are often asked to be increasingly strategic. And what that ultimately means is like, can you connect the business case or like the business operational flow to whatever it is you're trying to do? And sometimes the things we're doing, especially in data systems, are very abstract and feel like very separated from the revenue activities, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like we have one
it
client right
does.
now, they've got many duplicates and they can understand their data team understands that they have the duplicates are costly and damaging to their revenue go-to-market machine. But it's hard to make that explanation to a CMO who doesn't really understand why they need to spend $150,000 to fix their duplicates. But then if you have the experience in the operation side, you can actually start to walk someone through it. You can say like, okay, here's an account that's having
Hmm.
multiple
Hmm.
salespeople accidentally touch the same contact. And it's like
Yep.
it's disqualifying you in the sales process. And every time you lose one of those deals, you lose, $250,000. And like this is a
Yep.
problem that's actually pretty acute. But I think having that operational and business background helps me talk about it in a way that's like business focused, as opposed to, oh, this is a data problem. It's like not really a data problem. It's like a business problem, if that makes sense.
Yep. And part of the problem too is, and we all know this, I've worked in, I was telling you, multitude of IT departments and marketing departments, and you can throw PR in, public relations in with the marketing side, as far as I'm concerned. There's always a big disconnect there. So what the IT people want and what the marketing people want don't always jive. And I'll
Totally.
give you one of the biggest examples. I worked for a large Toronto hospital for many, many years, 21. I was a tech support lead. So again, switch gears a little bit. And I was running big projects. Well, can I tell you, the IT department thought it was a great time to go and ban YouTube in use internally in the hospital so employees didn't play, forgetting that the PR department used YouTube every day. There's
Yeah.
there's an absolute disconnect always. And when I talk to CMOs, they're saying, I wish my IT department, when I talk to IT heads, oh, I wish my marketing department, and it's a push-pull that keeps on going, right?
Totally. I mean, I wish, this is one of the things we strive for a lot when we work with our clients is for folks to take a de-siloed approach. Your
Mhm.
data system serves your entire company. Like it serves
Yes.
your customer experience, it serves your sales, your marketing teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead it's often like chopped up so that owners of different parts of it like don't talk to each other or they don't communicate, they don't have the same goals. So I really push people to drive for a RevOps org as opposed to a like marketing, like a
Mm.
MOPS, a sales ops, like separate orgs. Because ultimately, like your Salesforce conceptually is serving all your teams.
Yeah.
Like everybody should be having the same data, whether you're nurturing a lead, they become a customer, they become an advocate of yours, they start to look at other products. Like this is all one continuous life cycle. But it's a mistake, I think, that most organizations chop it up into pieces, then they build these walls and they don't talk to each other. And they do silly things like, oh, we don't like that our service team is spending a lot of time on YouTube. Let's kill YouTube. And it's like with the marketing team, it's like, hey, we know that's
I
one of
know.
our important platforms.
I know. It's so true. Um, you talk about systems, and to me, that's a golden rule. Like, how many companies, if they have a system, it's not very good, or they don't have one at all. And I think till somebody like yourself gets involved, that's probably pretty common, wouldn't you think?
Most of the companies that we work with are mature enough or old enough that they have
Okay.
some kind of a system and function. I've certainly like advised like earlier companies who are trying to get started for the first time, but most of the time, folks have an existing data system or environment stack or something like that. But the problem that they often have is, first of all, there's not that many really, really good data architects in the world. And so it's like really
Yeah.
common that you've fallen it's a complicated, difficult
Yeah.
discipline. And so it's common that folks just made natural mistakes in the development of the instance. And then
Yep.
secondly, you often have this constant turnover. Like these roles, like I said, there's not very many good ones, and so they're constantly changing jobs and getting poached, and they're expensive. And so you end up with this kind of like game of telephone where different people have contributed to modifying the system until you end up with this kind of unrecognizable jumble of like a lack of a central plan. And so often
Yeah.
folks are bringing me in because that lack of a plan has started to become quite painful to the revenue org. Like the leads are getting dropped, or they're not getting marketed to, or the data's gotten totally haywire and is bad, or whatever it is. And organizations tend to tolerate it for a pretty long time as it gets increasingly painful, especially if they're growing, it becomes increasingly painful. And then they usually call me at that point to come in and say, okay, we're kind of screwed. Like, what do we do to fix it? And that's kind of where our team comes in to try to like untangle it. Sometimes we'll just scrap it and rebuild it from scratch. Other times we'll say, okay, like you've got these modules are in good shape. These modules need to be redone, like that kind of thing.
Isn't documentation the key to all this? And we know companies don't keep their own documentation up.
It is definitely, I will say that we have like about a 0% track record of folks having documentation when we arrive. So I don't think even very reputable, very great large companies,
they don't do it.
The pressure to drive revenue and do revenue producing activities is always so great that something that feels like a long-term investment in your infrastructure, it just never gets to a high enough degree of priority that it is ends up getting done. Which leads to some of the problems with turnover. Like I think probably the most dangerous things we see from our side are like anytime there's surprise turnover in the data environment, like the data systems management, like somebody leaves and then no one knows where anything is anymore. And like things just start breaking. And it's like one person can really have a huge impact on the overall environment. So that is one of the things that we do with all of our RevOps engagements is like, not only do we build the modules in kind of organized way, but like you will get a training guide for each module. Like it will have videos of our team member, like walking you through what is happening. Even that is imperfect because these are really complex systems. And so it's still possible that stuff like slips through, but it's the documentation does help a lot for sure.
Yeah. Does the system start with the CRM or no?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
I think there are two distinct centers of the data environment, and in an ideal world, they are joined. One of those centers, and this may not be the case for every company, but let's say you have a company with a product. A product-based company is likely to have a data warehouse for all of this like incredibly detailed information about their product users. And it is common that that data warehouse is going to have both storage and functionality needs that will surpass Salesforce's or CRM capabilities. Like you might have like 1 billion lines of data to track user behavior if you're a big company with a large volume product. And Salesforce is probably not going to cut it for you. On the other hand, Salesforce is built to be so the CRM functionally, usually Salesforce for the companies I work with, but sometimes HubSpot. The CRM is built to be the center of the marketing and sales and CX data environment. So in that sense, it is the start of the data system because for go-to-markets, like everything is meant to be plugged into your CRM and to use your CRM as the source of truth. In a super ideal world, you've got a bidirectional sync between your data warehouse, like the key fields in your data warehouse you'd want to track, and your CRM. You could use like Fivetran or like reverse ETL to like pump data out of your data warehouse into your CRM. But I would say from a pure marketer perspective, if you ignore the product data, the additional value, but the additional complexity that comes with that, I would say yes, probably the CRM is the start of the data environment, but only because you need a source of truth. Like you need one place that everyone can agree that this is the real true information. And the thing about the CRM is that it's built to be that hub. Like it's built to have everything plug into it and be that source of truth. Like you could make your source of truth your, BI tool. Many organizations do that. They're like, we've did all the transformations and like the only place where the data is correct is in the BI tool. It's like you can do that. It will be a source of truth. It just won't be a very functional one because like nothing is going to plug into Power BI as like the activation tool of your data. Like Power BI just does one thing. It just like displays the data for you. Whereas, CRM is going to give you the sales org. It's going to give you marketing integration. It's going to give you like everything else that you'd want.
So true. And the other problem with CRMs is the data in the CRM is only, unless it's being piped into an automated API or something, or a conduit, is only as good It's the people who put the data into the CRM. So I hate to
People,
use an old computer terminology, garbage in, garbage out, right?
it is true. In fact, one of the first things that we do when we do a RevOps engagement is we audit the
Yeah.
data intake. Like, how is information being added to your
Added.
system?
Yeah.
And then we usually will then provide a guide that says, like, these are the only approved ways that data can or should be applied or added to your system. And sometimes that means like adding validation rules that prevent people from creating new data, because it hasn't gone through the proper channels, like the proper validation that it has to have XYZ
Mhm.
characteristics, or it has to come from these places or whatever. It's still it's very hard to make the thing truly impenetrable. Like people will still figure out a way to add
Yeah.
data to it. So we also couple that with both like the duplicate rules idea. So you're preventing duplicates automatically. And then also we create these data hygiene reports, which basically look for any data that seems incorrect. Like a simple one might be, do you have any records that are owned by currently inactive employees? Like somebody has left the company, but they still own records. You can run a report, and if your data is up to date, there will be no records. It'll just say 0. There's nothing in the database that matches this criteria. If, right? And so we do that times 20 different,
Yeah.
dimensions of looking at what data might be wrong. And so between the upload data intake guide, the duplicate rules, and the data hygiene reports, like you can build a pretty good system for protecting the data integrity.
Yeah.
But you're right, like no one does this. And as a result, they
Yeah.
end up with a lot of garbage in their system. And as a result, they have a really hard time selling and marketing to it.
Yeah. Besides the CRM and kind of customer data, which we talked about, where else are the prime sources of the data that you see in the companies you deal with?
Well, I'll be a linguistic stickler for a second.
Okay,
The
please.
sources of data, like where the data originates, are usually
Yeah,
via form submission on the site. So somebody's come
of
through and
course.
they've like, filled out a form. It's via some kind of a list upload, like usually like an event list or something like that. And then sometimes like a list from a third party, like a Zoom info kind of thing. And that could also be
Yep.
via like integration or something like that. So the data is not usually coming from that many unique places, in terms of its source, at least the CRM level data. The upper level data, like the analytics data, could be coming from lots and lots of places. Like you have many
Of course.
platforms, LinkedIn and Google and Facebook and Meta and Instagram and YouTube and all these things. They all have their own analytics programs. Um, where does the data live in the environment is maybe, I think, what you might have been also asking
Yeah,
about, which is say that the data lives in the CRM, obviously. And I think of it, as kind of the hub of data. The next major data center, I'm going to ignore the data warehouse for right now, because the data warehouse is like
okay.
really sort of a marketing focused place usually,
Yeah,
although it would ideally be
it
used
is,
for
but it's not. Yep. Yep.
it should be, but it's usually surpasses the technical capability of most marketing teams to get that data. And so they're like, they got enough to worry about, so they don't worry about it. But the other major one is the marketing automation tool. So that is usually Marketo or HubSpot in today's age. But other, there's classics like Eloqua and Pardot and Microsoft Dynamics, and there are many of these tools
Oh,
that
yeah.
operate these things. We don't, just for full reference, we don't accept basically any work other than HubSpot and Marketo now,
Yeah.
because other tools are somewhere between non-functional, dilapidated, like they have non-intuitive behavior, and it's just easy for our teams to end up like accidentally screwing something up. And so we usually just tell folks like, hey, if you want to work with us, just like you need to get a better tool. Otherwise, like we're not going to work with these tools. But so the marketing automation tool is the other kind of big central thing. And the way I frame this usually is, if the CRM is about holding your data as the source of truth, maybe like making sure it is clean, making sure it is extensible and can be used in other places. The marketing automation suite is like the activation arm of that data hub, which is to say you
Mhm.
have all this data and I want to do stuff with it. The marketing automation suite is now what's going to then use that data to send emails, to attach to your lists to your advertising programs, for example, to like attach your lists to your your sales outreach, to set up like notifications and automated alerts and many, many other things that the automation tools can do. So I usually think about that as the sort of your action arm. Ideally, these are a bidirectional, complete 100% sync with no sync errors. Like ideally, they've got the whole thing together as one unit.
You're being ideal.
I will preach from the mountaintops, Rob, that like this is a very valuable thing for folks to do. And some orgs, in fact, our org, DRA, we have really invested a lot in this. So we are actually basically at zero sync errors, zero duplicate errors, zero workflow errors at all times. We have like regular hygiene to make sure that we are that clean.
Nice.
We are the only org I've ever seen who is that clean. Part of that is because I am a data guy and I also, I'm one of the co-founders. So I get to kind of control how it goes. But
yes.
But it is very difficult for folks to keep that aligned.
Yep.
There are a few other tools as well. Like there's the sales tool, there's the CX tool. Like these will all have data, but they're usually going to be pulling, they're kind of like niche action arms that are pulling data specifically for CX, or they're pulling it from the CRM specifically for sales outreach or something like that.
Yeah. So when a company brings you guys in and brings Digital Reach in and says, we've got a problem, sort it out, what does it typically take to sort it out, like time frame wise, cost wise, and that kind of stuff? Does it just is it like a 3-day process, a 5-day process? Is there any kind of in between? Or
well, it depends a lot on the size and complexity of the org as a starting place. So we tend to have our line that we divide this. On the one side we have enterprises, on the other side we have startups. And the line that we use to divide it is, do you have 10 or more in-house marketers? If you have 10 or more employees that have a marketing title, we are considering you an enterprise at this point. Now, this is like a pretty rough line, but like we're calling it that. For folks that have that many marketers, there's usually like quite a bit of historical complexity. There's technical debt. The procedure that we would go through, we call it a go-to-market roadmap, would take a decent amount of time. Like usually we say 2 to 3 months to complete the full kind of like diagnostic and then action plan for what to do from there.
That makes sense.
For the startups, we usually say about 4 weeks, something like that. Okay. But I will clarify that this is for our kind of overall go-to-market roadmap. So that's inclusive not just of RevOps and data systems, but also the pipeline generation activities, your brand and your content, and your website, your digital experience, your ads, your creative, like all that stuff. So that's a more comprehensive one. If folks come in just for the RevOps audit, we can usually do that. Again, enterprise about half the time. So like 1 to 2 weeks for the startups, and then 1 to 2 months for the enterprises.
Yeah.
And cost varies. Yeah,
it varies. And what's the typical revenue of a company that comes to your team?
Typical, man. It ranges. I would say we have everything from, startups who've maybe raised $50 to $100 million
money,
but who have only produced 5 to 10 million of income, or revenue, all the way up to, global brand, multi-billion-dollar revenue companies every year. So it's hard for me to give like a typical answer. I would say like we really have 2 core buckets of companies we work with, that kind of enterprise, big companies, and we've got those kind of like scrappy, aggressive, we raise money now, we need to grow kinds of startups. So usually I would say we tend not to end up working with companies that are like seed or series A, although I would say we're maybe like becoming a little bit more open-minded to that as we've got a bit of a more scalable product now that we can.
That's hard. Series A is hard. Yeah.
It's just early. There's some benefits to that, obviously. Like we don't have as much technical debt to work through, but there's some downsides as well. Like it's a much tighter budget. It's usually a very, very stressed out engagement where like the client side is freaking out the whole time. And it's obviously a little hard on as an agency for that.
Yeah. And then of course, startups and big Fortune 500 companies have their own complexities. I mean, they're different. Having worked with both, they're different kettles of fish. Like they really are.
Yeah, there's no single silver bullet for any of this. But I would say like the enterprises tend to have tons of budget. They tend to have tons of time. They tend to be relatively cool, but they also tend to have like deeply intractable problems that like are extremely
Yes.
difficult and time intensive to solve. And so it's a lot more politics and a lot less like actual development or strategy or whatever it is.
Yep.
The smaller companies, very little politics, very little technical debt, like happy to make things move quick, which is great, but also an insane amount of pressure, a very small budget, like lots of intensity. And so there's no like all perfect situation, but we have a lot of success with both of those different types of companies.
Yeah. Do you personally have a preference, or is it depend?
I think it really depends. Like it depends a lot on the stakeholders that we work with.
Yep.
Um,
That's fair.
for us, the main thing is partnership. And I think when we are finding ourselves in a place where both sides really feel like the partnership is the primary thing, then I have a great engagement regardless of if it's a big, slow company or a small, fast company. I think if the partnership alignment isn't there, it doesn't matter if they've got tons of budget and they're a huge brand or whatever. It's like it's still going to feel bad on our side. And the same as for startups, like they may be spending a ton of money with us trying to grow really fast, but if they don't really believe in us as a partner, we don't really like feel like
Yep.
good mutual vibe, then it
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I so agree with that, resonate with that. Too many times in our business, running agencies, companies treat us like contractors, employees, etc., and they don't believe in us as partners. And then they realize why there's this friction. And the minute the good companies, I don't care how big or how small they are, I've seen it both ways, get into that partnership thing mode, then it's much easier for both sides of the relationship to grow.
We had a executive meeting December of this past year at our company where we kind of talked about what we wanted to do for 2025 and what the core mission was. And the big thing we took away from it was that building mutual trust in the beginning of the relationship was the most important thing we could do. It was more
Yep.
important than having better reports or having, like better
Oh yeah.
SLA or whatever. It was just, can we develop a state where it feels like, hey, if we screw something up, we will own it and we will fix it. And if we need something from you, you're going to give it to us. Like if we call you, we need your help getting something done, you're going to help us do it. Um, I think I can think back, speaking of marketing automation, I can think back to a time with a long advocate and client of ours, who's been a client or advocate of ours for 10 years now, maybe, where in Pardot, I accidentally left a comma on the end of a workflow and,
Uh-oh.
and
Uh-oh.
basically like wiped the database of like a $1 billion company, more or less. It ended up being recoverable, but it was like she and I had a lot of trust already. And so she got on the phone with me at 10 o'clock at night. We looped in their IT team who's in India, and we worked from 10 p.m. till 1 in the morning until we got the data restored and it was fine. And we didn't get fired. Like we
Are they
were
still a client?
that company is no longer a client for very reasonable reasons. Like they ended up niching really hard into a specific
Yeah, yeah,
area and worked with like a very
yeah,
specialist organization after us. But they're still like I'm still very close with the leadership team at that company.
yeah. I get
And
that.
we were not fired because of that. I'll tell you that. Like we remained a client for a long time
Yeah,
after, and uh, and it was like a testament to the power of just having a trusted relationship with someone
yep,
where
yep.
anyone can make a mistake. I'm very experienced and I left a comma on this thing. Anyone can make a mistake.
Mistakes happen. I mean,
Totally.
I've run big $1 million projects, and mistakes happen. I've made them. You've made them. We're all human. It's how you deal with the mistakes and come out of it. This
Totally.
is like, this is really interesting. But before we move on, I like to have some fun. So I'm going to with
Sure.
you. I'm
Sure.
going to throw you at three questions. Don't warn people. First question is, what couple songs are on your music playlist right now?
Mm, yeah. I've so I've been listening to I live in New York City And
Yeah, I know.
so we get access to all this music that comes through. So right now, I've got a couple of people who are like really what the kids are listening to. Like it's way below my age range,
Oh, cool. I love it.
but I'm listening to a kind of hip hop artist called BB No Money.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to a female singer called Magdalena Bay,
Yep.
uh, who is like kind of she did like a concept album recently, is really cool. And then I've also this is other side of the spectrum, like throwing back a little bit. I've listened to a lot of Rage Against the Machine lately. Really old school, like American rock,
Yep.
like hard rock band. So yeah, those are my three that I'll say, like kind of random eclectic mix, but that's what I'm listening to right now.
Mine's the same. So I get that. And then question number two, where do you want to go on vacation that you've never been?
Ooh.
Your dream
So
spot?
I've had the benefit of traveling a lot in my life. But the areas that are most exciting for me right now, I'm going to go to India next year for the first time.
Awesome.
Um, met a lot of friends here in New York of Indian descent, and one of them's getting married. And so we're going to go out and go check out an Indian wedding in India, which is really exciting. So yeah, I'll say India. I'm most excited to go. I also love Indian food, so I'm very excited about that.
You need to come here then, because Toronto's got a large Indian population.
No doubt, Toronto has the best Indian food I've ever had in my life to date. To
Yeah.
date, I'm sure when I go to India,
Either e
fine, but
either in the city or out in Brampton, which is one of the biggest Indian spots, which is out towards the airport in the world outside of India. So, and then the third and last question is, what are you reading right now, if anything?
yeah. So I tend to have two things going on at once. So I tend to have a daytime nonfiction and a
Yeah.
nighttime fiction.
Oh, you are
Night
so me.
fiction, I have been fully pulled into the Red Rising phenomenon. I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah,
with this sci-fi
I am.
stuff. I'm on to the fourth book now, and it is like a little reductive and repetitive, and I'm kind of like, losing steam, but four books, give them credit. And then on the nonfiction side, I just finished a reread of my total number one nonfiction book for all people who are interested in business, but really everything, is a book called Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows.
I've read
Um,
it. Yeah.
she's a professor at my alma mater, actually, Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, and she has these incredibly simple ways of explaining how different systems operate as a function of feedback loops. And as a manager, for example, this was a super eye-opening thing for me, where in order to make good choices, I needed good feedback, I need accurate feedback from my reports.
Hmm.
But they are under a lot of pressure just by the nature of the power dynamic to not tell me anything bad.
Yeah.
And so they will often just leave out things, or would often leave out things that were like would potentially make them look bad, or something like that, because they
Hmm.
just incentivize, their incentives were as such. So again, going back to building trust, like in order to create good decision making, I needed to create a positive feedback loop where people could feel they could trust me with sensitive information, and then that we would then make good choices, and then things would get better, which made them more trusting,
Yeah.
and so forth. And so I think what this book really caused me to like go all the way to the beginning and think, like, okay, how can I create a business culture around honesty and trust, which
I
is
love that.
harder than you would think, but it's like, but it was a really great book. So highly recommend Thinking in Systems, Danella Meadows.
I've read it. Yeah. Well worth to read. I'm like you. I'm an avid reader, so I've always got books on the go. Um, and right now, and I do what you do. I read a pleasure book and then a business book usually. The business book I'm just finishing is Startup Nation. Don't know if you've read that one. It's about all the
Yeah,
startups out of Israel. Amazing
yeah.
book.
We talked
And
about this before. Yeah.
and the pleasure book I'm about halfway in is a book called The Dirtiest Race in History. And what it talks about is the 100-meter final at Seoul, Korea, where Ben Johnson got disqualified for
Mhm.
steroids for
Mhm.
Stanislaus in the
Mhm.
100-meter final at the Olympics. And out of that race, 7 out of 8 athletes were suspended at one time or not in their career. The one that was not was American Carl Lewis. And there's a cloud over Carl's head because the USDA has admitted they invalidated several drug tests. So there you go. So that's the end with that. And then along those two, I almost always have a relationship book on the go as well. And I'm reading a book called The Atomic Habits for Communication. So there you go.
Yeah.
Have we learned?
I'm familiar with that series. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this conversation, Andrew. If somebody wants to find out more about what you guys do or reach out to you, Digital Reach, how's the best way?
Easiest way for now is to just hop on our website. We've got a pretty good array of content there that we're kind of frequently updating. We also have like a pretty active presence now on LinkedIn. So you'll find me posting there, but you'll also find our company. We post regularly industry news, our own kind of expert takes on stuff that's happening in marketing right now across the full go-to-market. So again, it's like branding content, DX, like website digital experience stuff, RevOps and pipeline gen. So advertising, SEO, all of those things. Yeah. So pretty comprehensive amount of content going on to LinkedIn now. But also, if you ever want to just, ask me a question or chat, just feel free to shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. I check all of them, and I'm always happy to chat marketing.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I appreciate your time. All the best, and have a great day.
Hey, you too, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. This podcast has been brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing concierge to help the business owner put all his pieces together, whether it's email marketing, WordPress security, WordPress design and development, PPC, and more. Text Stunning Digital Marketing for all your digital marketing needs today. A very special thank you to Andrew for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much every day. My mother, Ann Cairns, who's still doing really well and is an inspiration. And of course, Tiz Maroney. And Tiz, I know I've said it, but thank you so much for all the inspiration you give me every day.